Call to order the ASRB meeting of Monday, June 16th at 4:30 PM. Have a roll call, please.
Chair Lindsay,
Present.
Vice Chair Camera. Here. Commissioner Middleman. Commissioner Sullivan.
Present.
Member Delgavio is noted absent. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I just want to remind all the members of the board, following up on Julie's note this week about microphones and speaking into the microphones so that all of our comments are captured. Okay, do we have any changes to the agenda tonight?
There are no changes to the agenda and there are no desk items.
Okay, all right, moving on to public comment. This is an opportunity for any member of the public in the room or online to make a comment on any item not on tonight's agenda. You're invited to do so now.
For those online, please use the raised hand feature if you'd like to speak. And we have no raised hands.
Okay. Yep. Moving on to the consent agenda. I see 2 items on the consent agenda tonight. Would any member of the board like to pull one or more items off the consent agenda for further discussion? Otherwise, we'll pass the 2 items in a single motion. Your meeting minutes. Let's see, you have a comment on how the meeting minutes were captured? No? Okay, all right. I move that we pass the consent agenda items. Oh, okay. All right. Fair question. How are meeting minutes?
It's a combination. So during the meeting, I will type up as much as I can, but then I typically go back and re-listen to the meeting. So another reason why it's very important to speak into the mics.
Does that address your question? No. Okay, so I made the motion. We had a second. Member Middleman? Yep.
Chair Lindsay,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kamra. Yes. Member Middleman, Member Sullivan.
Yes.
Okay. So moving on to the public agenda. So we only have one item tonight, and this is proposal for conceptual design review at 96 Odisha Drive.
Hello and thank you. I will be introducing the project at 966 Godisha Drive for Architectural and Site Review Board Review. For this conceptual design review project, the applicant is proposing to construct a new single-family residence, a new detached ADU, and associated site improvements. And as Sage mentioned, there are no desk items at this time. The property size is 1.58 acres, and it is in the suburban residential SR zoning district. The site is currently undeveloped except for an existing water tank that is located at the southwestern portion and existing fencing along the front, northwestern, and southeastern sides. The parcel of the project site was created as part of a recent 2-lot land division. The project site is visible from the Godisha Drive roadway and also partially visible from the Jefferson Avenue roadway and is also partially visible from adjacent properties. The site is heavily screened at the middle, southern, and eastern portions by existing trees and shrubs. This is the overall site plan, which shows the details and extent of the conceptual design project. The proposed main residence is located near the setback lines, and the ADU is located at the central portion of the property. So the applicant has also provided elevations. This is for the main house, starting with the north elevation. This is for the south. This is for the east. This is for the west. And something I forgot to mention, for the proposed site plan, the property owner agreed to relinquish access rights from Jefferson Road as part of the restrictive covenant from the creation of the land division. And so the proposed location on the ADU on the project site may need to be changed to allow for a driveway leading up to the ADU that is both compliant to the restrictive covenant as well as for the town municipal code. And as only one indoor parking space is proposed for the main residence, the plans at formal design review would need to show how 5 or more parking spaces can fit on the project site, as a minimum of 4 on-site parking spaces is required for the proposed main residence, as well as 1 for the ADU. So going back to elevations, these are the elevations proposed for the ADU, as well as the east and west elevations. Here are the proposed materials for the project, and the applicant is encouraged to change the wall finishing material at the main residence from a light stucco color to either stone or to earth tone per the town's residential design guidelines. And lastly, the applicant has provided many renderings, so I'll quickly go through the renderings, starting with the main residence. The applicant has also showed bird's eye view of aerial of the main residence as well as renderings for the ADU. That concludes my presentation. Staff is happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is on Zoom to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone, any member of the board have any questions of Diego?
Well, I guess we could wait for the applicant to tell, but that may be not.
I believe the applicant can best answer that.
I have a question. Is there anything missing from this application which would immediately prevent us from moving ahead with a conceptual design review? I noted the driveways were not defined.
I wouldn't say it would prohibit you from moving forward. I think it'd be good to get some comments to the applicant if there are any related to the design of the structure, site placement. Story poles have not been installed yet. I also think, get applicant can have some feedback, and then whether it comes back for further conceptual or at formal. I think the next time it comes back to the ASRB, we will have more details. We'll want to make sure we nail down the 35% slopes issue. With regard to the ADU and the driveway, the ADU may be close enough to the road where it doesn't have to necessarily have a driveway. That's something the applicant should work out with the fire district, but it's just that access cannot be taken from Jefferson. So they'd have to find another place on site to fit that ADU parking. So these are things that definitely will need to be addressed at the next meeting. Again, whether it's another conceptual or formal design review meeting. But given we do have at least enough details on the design itself, it would be good for the applicant to get some feedback at this time.
Or follow-up questions. There appears to be an existing structure on the property, looks perhaps like a horse stable.
Can you
Is
go
that
to the site plan?
drive?
That might be just off the site.
up?
I'll go back to the survey.
Neighbor's property? Okay.
Well, this is owned by the applicant, both the properties, and they just recently received a land division. So I think if you zoom in there, Keiko, I think it's this old barn building. I think that's just off site, but the applicant is here and definitely help
All right,
clarify.
we'll address that then. Sorry, one last question. It's at the top of the slope, there appears to be a structure on the neighbor's property, and I was wondering what proximity of that might be to the proposed placement of the main house?
We'll have the applicant give an estimate. So there's a main house on the adjacent site that was probably built 20 years ago or so, maybe a little more. And then there's 3 accessory structures, an ADU, and 2 office-type structures that are coordinated with the ADU. And so you can see those there on the aerial photo. And so the largest main structure is that one kind of at the bottom of the site. It's kind of the western side of the site. And then you'll see those kind of combination of those 3 accessory structures there. And those are probably closest. I would say it's probably around 100 feet away.
It's hard.
I think we had, sorry for cutting in, but I think that the distance between those was on on the materials that we submitted. It should have, I remember doing
We
it,
have it
so,
here. Kago will pull it up. It's in the plan. So.
Yeah, there you go.
All of my questions are in an effort.
there
to
you go.
Get a better understanding of
Yep.
placement of a structure on an undeveloped property.
So it shows it a little over 100 feet away from the nearest small office building and about 260 away from the main residence.
Got it.
That stable over there. Well, like, when you-
That is it there.
It's pretty close to.
Yeah, I perceived it as closer to Jeff. Years on this satellite. Okay, that's it for my questions.
I did have a question about, I read somewhere that quite a few trees that were really close to the building.
Yeah, so on the site plan, let me just go back here. So on the plans itself, the applicant does state that the goal of the design is to preserve the trees on site, but no trees are explicitly stated to be removed from the plans. However, if you look at the aerial photo, there seems to be a lot of trees in that location where the ADU as well as the main residence would be placed. So the applicant should clarify whether all trees would be protected at formal design review.
I guess I would say that the more discerning question is any significant trees being removed versus they were, when I walked the site today, there's a lot of trees, but a lot of them don't fall into that category.
Yeah, it's quite possible that there could just be smaller trees that need to be removed. There are building pads out there without the trees there. It's closer to them, and then there's any trenching necessary or things like that have to be looked at a little closer.
Any other questions from the board to Diego?
Yeah, I had a couple. When the land division happened, was there a requirement of that land division being approved that this site was quote buildable?
So they are required to show a place in which they can fit a structure without the need for variance. And so that's something that was raised in the staff report, that the applicant will need to ensure that this project doesn't need a variance. If they apply for a variance, we'd have to take a look at it. It could be difficult to make the findings given that the subdivision was created with the idea that it could fit a building without the need for a variance.
Got it. And that leads to my second question is that with this proposal, it seems like they need both a slope and a setback variance.
I don't think setbacks are close. They'll probably be okay. If anything, some minor adjustment. What you see there, that's the actual setback line, not the boundary line. So the setback line on the side setback is required to go up to 30 feet when it's over 17 feet tall. So there might need to be some slight adjustment there, but it's close. So the setbacks are probably okay. The steep slopes are something that will need more clarification, which will be kind of coincide with any grading plan.
Got it. And then I heard you say that it was a white structure. You encouraged them to remove the white, but one of the things I noted on site was this site is bordered by very white houses. So how would you give us guidance on that?
We apply projects with regard to the residential design guidelines. So in some cases, the design guidelines speak to using white when it's appropriate for the architectural style of the structure. So we get into some types of the older farmhouse looking structures, things that might look more like this, or you get into like the more George Washington Smith architect style houses, like the Santa Barbara style houses, it might be more appropriate. Otherwise, the design guidelines speak to looking for something for more earth tones. So other buildings, either it fits their style, it's been that way for a long time, or someone has painted their house, which doesn't need a permit.
Okay, any other questions? I have one, and this is mostly just clarification around how setbacks are measured. Is it measured relative to the terrain? This is as it relates to steep slope. Or is it measured on a horizontal?
It's measured on a horizontal plane.
Okay, interesting. Okay, thank you. Okay. No other questions from the board of staff, so we'll move to the applicant's presentation.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. As I think I'm just going to reiterate some of the stuff that we've already heard, is that the lot was just created this year. I think it was recorded with San Mateo County in January of 2025. It was a long process to go through that land division. I think, as you know, Article 15, Land Usage, Chapter 152, Articles 1 through 13 or something like that of the town's municipal code. And it included having to provide a CEQA report, which I think we did in 2024. I know sometimes this comes up as to whether or not we would be required to do another CEQA report. I would hope that that's not necessary, given that we just did one. I think we spend a great deal of time looking ways to support a multi-generational household, a single family residence and ADU. There were not a lot of places other than what we presented, and going through the lot or subdivision, that was the only place you could really put the main house. I would say, and obviously, we've taken a lot of time and consideration to meet with Woodside's rural scenic character. It's not our first rodeo. We've done a couple houses here, and we're pretty sensitive to that. I would say that the building site is located on an elevated plateau, and the future building is not visible really from Jefferson, clearly from the other side, because it's all sloped. So the visibility of the house, other than the adjacent houses across the street, high on the hill, it's not really going to be that visible. And as you can also see from the trees, and it was for that reason we opted not to put up story poles, because it was like, well, who's gonna see it? So anyway, that's really all I've had to say on that. We did speak to the neighbors, the adjacent neighbors across the way, about the visibility, and whether or not so how do they get their feelings about it, and they've been supportive. So I think it's all I have for now. I think given these comments that we might get today, hopefully we can move on towards the final review.
Okay, thank you. I think this might be a presentation from a car, so.
I know, I'm sorry.
All right, does then any members of the board have questions of the applicant? No questions?
I just realized that Sage answered my question earlier.
Member Sullivan? No? Yeah, I mean, question from my standpoint is that, of course, in the absence of story poles, it's really difficult to understand the placement of the structure on the property. And when I approached the property on Jefferson from the east, so this is coming over down the hill, the property is in clear view. And what I struggled to understand is the placement of the structure relative to that view. So I think this is an instance where, on an undeveloped piece of property, story poles are incredibly valuable to understand the visual impact. That was more of a comment than a question. But, and, in terms of going forward, any supporting materials would help better understand visibility of the property. It did alert me to one concern, which is if the property, depending on the screening of the property, there's a fair amount of fenestration on the east side. And obviously, we're going to be concerned as a board about light emission. I think was one concern of mine. I don't know if there's any part of the application, whether you want to address any of that concern preemptively. But that was sort of one concern that I had.
Well, we've dealt with that before in all the houses that we've worked on through Woodside, and so we take that. I mean, consideration for lighting. It's all down lighting. It all conforms to what the town is acceptable to the town. But we've from a design standpoint, we've always been able to deal with that. I would not think that would be particularly challenging. I would say this on the story poles. We did for one of the developments we did in, I want to say it was in Stadler up by Alice's Restaurant. We used for ASRB, in addition to story poles, but we used digital story poles, which allows you to walk on the property and use your phone and actually see the structure there. And I don't know what the requirements are for the town to, and actually, by the way, it was actually super helpful to the ASRB because in the meeting with the ASRB, they were able to pull up their phone, which I didn't actually expect, and visibly see the structure in the meeting. So being a big proponent of technology and moving things forward, if I have the discretion to ask the board, if I put story poles, can I put digital story poles? That would be, that's a request. I don't know if that's doable. I mentioned it at one point to Kiego, but it's certainly, I found it super helpful, and hopefully it might set a precedent for others.
I will defer to planning on that one.
Well, I agree. It's a beneficial tool for the digital kind of placement of the site. Story poles are required by code. There are certain requirements for story poles. And the one thing that I'll say versus digital versus actual story poles is people see story poles. It's part of it's sometimes as much of a notification process as it is just a visual placement and view of it. So, but nonetheless, story poles are required. They're optional at conceptual. And then if they don't go up at conceptual, they do have to go up at formal.
That was kind of a question, like in terms of the notification aspect or somebody besides the board seeing it, how can a neighbor use said digital story poles if it was an alternative?
Yeah, and I mean, and as we move forward in the future, there could be a placard with a QR code or something like that, but at this time, definitely, just the casual passerby, that's something, or, you may live across the valley from a project and not necessarily drive by it, but you can actually see the story poles. So for those reasons, I still think they are valuable at this time.
All right. Any other questions from board members for the applicant? None.
The material. Oh, what is the material, the brown on the ADU? What is that material?
It's a standing seam metal.
The metal.
Yeah.
It's metal.
It's like a standing seam roof kind of wrapped around the building.
Some wood and some metal.
Yeah. So the garage shows some wood exterior, and then with the standing seam metal roof and siding with some of the plaster stucco on the infill pieces.
Let's just ask, is it a safe assumption that if we were to move forward to formal design review, that the missing driveways would go essentially where they would need to go while protecting the site, landscape plan, all the things related to code. And that, if we're okay with the concept of an ADU in a main house and the colors, there's no reason to return to conceptual.
It's possible, yes. So the conceptual design review, the requirements are very limited for a reason. It's trying to get people to, before they get too far down the road, to get some visual feedback from the board. Whereas a lot of people submit a lot more than what's required at conceptual review. So sometimes you may be used to more details on plans. But the formal design review will require preliminary grading plan. It will show driveways, it will show a paved area plan, landscape plan. Those are all things that are actually required at that stage. So if the board has some general feedback on the concept and the design, it's possible that all of those things could be addressed at the next stage.
I'm not quite ready to
Sure.
pass it on to formal for a couple of reasons. I think it's a very nicely done.
Well, just a reminder, if you just speak
Okay.
into the microphone, like.
Nice size, you're not building massive house. I love the ADU. I think that's a great, looks a little bit like a garage. I think there's one over on Albion that's a lot like that. So I like that. The one thing I can't get past and won't get past is the white. I know, obviously we have a lot of farmhouses in the neighborhood, but this is not a farmhouse. I think the beige color that's on the ADU is attractive, something in those tones or possibly darker. But because it is sitting right up on the hill, and even if it's shaded by trees, I know all those other houses on Gadisha are going to be able to see it. So the lighting is of concern, and definitely we would want a more muted, natural, organic color for the house. And I would definitely like to see the materials board. We push this on to formal. And I'd also like to see the setup of the driveway, how it comes in, the parking spots, that sort. Are there retaining walls? What's the whole drive area entryway look
I mean, I guess I respectfully get,
like? Okay,
Thank you.
I thought we were
Alright.
done with questions.
So we are now in board discussion. So,
Do you want to do public comment first?
oh, public
Yeah.
comments, yes, of course,
Oh,
preempted
sorry.
public comments.
Very
Yes,
good.
that's, all right,
Good
so
for
let's
you.
close the applicant's presentation and question, Q&A, and let's hand it over to public discussion. If any member of the public would like to comment on this project, now is the time to do so. I see no members or members of the public in the room.
And there's no one online.
Okay. That was quick. So, board discussion. So, Vice Chair Camera has kicked us off. Anyone else on the board like to voice a comment on this? And in doing so, please indicate how your sense and how you feel about this project as it pertains to conceptual review approval, or in any conditions that you'd like to place.
I mean,
in place.
I don't really see any issues. Like, I think the missing elements are going to have to go where they have to go to facilitate the house being where it's being. I did walk the site. I do agree that pretty much the only place to put a house, the only place to put an ADU. It was a little difficult for me to figure out where the ADU was going, but I don't see any reason why that would hold up moving to formal. I guess I respectfully disagree about the white. Looking at a satellite photo, every single bordering property has a white house. So this would be the standalone not white house in a field of white houses. And so I defer to the applicant to choose whatever color they feel like choosing. And white would not be out of place in that neighborhood. I like the design. I don't feel that the fenestration is that much to the street, considering the most outstanding house that I saw from the site was another modern house with large fenestrations. It fits with the neighborhood. And while it is a lot of fenestration for the house. The house is also a small structure comparatively. So I don't really have that many comments to move it over to formal, and I'll be in favor of that.
Mr. Sullivan?
I think my colleagues have pretty covered the territory. I didn't have any additional questions or concerns on the property.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, from my perspective, I mean, with regards to the structure, main structure and ADU, I mean, I have no specific feedback with regards to the design. I think that in terms of scale and massing, it's quite appropriate for the site. Thank Member Kiego for calling out the residential guidelines and the white stucco. I think as Planning Director Sage pointed out, some of these structures could predate their guidelines or have been repainted. I think it's our guidelines are fairly explicit with regards to color, and I think that, you know, we should adhere to them. So my feedback on that regard is to revisit the stucco color, to look for something that's not brilliant white. We've accepted things that are quite light in color, but typically ask for some sort of neutral tone or light earth tone. That pretty much summarizes it. And to make a motion on this, I'd like to volunteer the motion, and by saying that motion to approve to move to formal, however, return to the ASRB with that proposal such that we can review specifically placement of the ADU, access to the ADU, driveway, parking, final color, and just general overall, well, and of course, we'll be looking for neighbor outreach and any feedback that may come from surrounding neighbors on the presentation, because story poles will be installed by that time. Yeah, just generally just a sanity check on many of the unanswered questions today. That's my motion.
Thank you for reading my mind. That's what I was getting at, not formal stuff. I can second that.
All right, good. Would decline. Oh,
I
interesting.
do, I have a thing about curb appeal. I want to see what the curb looks like. I want to see how the driveway goes in, how it turns from the street and the neighbors, how that works. Also, I know we have bent the rules, our design guidelines a little bit on lighter colors, but they're usually on houses rather than modern type of houses. I don't want to give the impression that we're going to approve a lighter, not necessarily bright white, but a lighter white. I think we need to get back to our design guidelines, which are organic, natural, where it blends in with the hillsides and pure, that sort of thing. So I would rather,
I can't hear you.
I would rather.
I really need to speak into the microphone.
A complete materials board along with a layout of where does the driveway come in? Is it going to be a sharp turn? Is it going to be an easy driveway? You know, is it going to have a lot of these driveways have big retaining walls to get into those. So that's sort of just something I like to see.
Sure. So that's completely understood. These are items that are required with formal design review. And also with formal design review, we gain a couple of other things with the story poles, with the new driveway location. We have them actually stake out the area of that. We also have the engineering department to review the project, and they review what's called site distance studies prepared by civil engineers for new driveways. So I think landscape plans, all of these details would come with the full lighting plan, full site lighting plan. And I think maybe, you know, to get all of that information may be very beneficial for the review of this project. And that's clearly expressed that while there are not significant comments on the design itself, really when it comes back to look at the materials, the colors, the driveway location, the grading, all of those items, those are not off the table for the formal design review. And so hearing that the comments right now are really to a lot of the things that were mentioned in the motion with driveway parking placement, story poles, neighborhood outreach, color and materials board, all the landscape plan, all those requirements. that when that comes back as a package, the board would still have the ability to comment and make recommendations on those items.
Does that address your concern, or do you feel strongly that coming,
No, it's not
Continuing the
necessarily
consent
that, I just don't want it to be like, okay, it's a consent agenda.
It's,
I mean,
yes.
This is, I mean, I agree that because we want these things, we want the
Right.
story poles. So
Yep.
the neighbors across the street on Godisha can look down and see,
Yep.
you know, what they're gonna, what they're gonna be looking at.
Yes.
So I'm okay on that. I just don't want it to seem like, yeah, we really like it. Let's just.
Yeah, so we'll emphasize that in the action letter if that's the board's decision tonight.
so in part by moving to formal, it makes all of these requirements.
And it gives the board the ability to then comment on all of those items once they're submitted.
With a good material.
Yeah, no, the materials board is that's all part of the requirements for formal design review.
Yeah, so maybe to add as an agendized item.
Yes,
to the-
yes. Because story poles aren't installed, it would come back as a full-blown formal design review item with story poles and a
That's
full
right.
staff
So
report.
I don't have story points. Well, it's today that's implied that it has to be an agenda.
That's correct.
So I think motion stands unmodified.
Everything I said was superfluous.
Chair Lindsay,
Second, yes.
Yes.
sorry, Vice Chair Comra, Member Middleman,
Yes.
Member Sullivan.
Yes.
Good. All right.
Great, thank you very much. And for the applicant's benefit, we'll be in touch and we'll get you a letter within the next day or two. And we're happy to meet with you afterwards. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. That was the only project item. There is mention of director's reports.
Yes, you should have all received a package of director's reports. Did you guys not get director's reports?
Physical packet.
Oh, is it not on?
They were
online?
all linked on the website.
Oh,
I haven't done my homework.
That's hard. So, so we caught up. A couple of reasons. We had a change in staff. We had a change in permitting system. So Julie's done a great job of putting together kind of a little bit of new of a format. We'll look to it, but you know, we're caught up and we'll continue to get them now monthly as they're prepared. But just a couple of highlights. You know, town continues to remain busy. When you just look at the valuation from last year, fiscal year to this year to date, last year was in the almost 66 million range. Now we're at the almost $82 million range. So in terms of the cost of what people are building, it partially could be the cost of construction going up. So the valuations remain high, but even the number of permits remain similar. Looking at new building, the number of permits for new buildings, last year at this time it was 30. This year at this time it was 30. And you know, a couple of other things, you know, addition remodels are up from last year a bit. So those just show some of the general trends, but just continue to remain busy.
well, I apologize. I did not download them and read them, but I trust those are the takeaway highlights.
Yes, I just summarized the last one, but there's a number of them and now they're all caught up.
Okay. Do we need to do a motion or?
Nope, there's nothing, it's just a report.
Well, I guess my one question is, how are ADUs tracking?
It's a good question. I haven't run that yet this year, but it is June. I usually try to do it around halfway through, so maybe next time we meet, I'll
Sure.
have that answer for you.
Well, you know, anecdotally, I think we do see ADUs on most every project.
Yeah.
There's only a handful have been.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're continuing to see more and we're continually try to make things more flexible incrementally.
Yep. Could see more JADUs.
Yeah.
That would help.
There is something that was, it's clarified too with that JADUs actually don't have to have an interior connection anymore, if they have their own bathroom. And so that's, something that's been clarified, in state law and, in our next change, we'll be clarifying our code, but we are applying it that way.
I'll adjourn the meeting at 5:10 PM. Quick and efficient.